Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel about ACEs of East Asian Heritage. I'm your host, Sarah. My pronouns are she, her. Now, I just wanted to mention a few things before we get started. So although this panel is called ACEs of East Asian Heritage, there are some people here who are of Southeast Asian heritage, including myself. So I have Filipino heritage, and we have 6 awesome speakers who will be sharing their experiences today. So just another couple of things. Please, can you send your questions to us through SliDo, please? We will be more likely to see your questions if you do it through that versus the YouTube chat. You can find the link for the SliDo link below. And what you need to do is click on the link and then find the relevant session. So ours is ACEs of East Asian Heritage. Please also send any anonymous comments through that as well, but also share them through the chat. Now, this session is around 50 minutes long, and I'm now going to let the panelists, actually, before I get onto the panelists, if there is anything that will be triggering or if there's any content warnings, the panelists will mention what the content warning is. And while they are talking about the relevant part, they'll hold their hand up like this. This means that gives you an opportunity to mute the sound if you wish, if for any reason you don't want to to listen to that part of the session. And once they're done talking, they will raise their hand, they'll put their hand down. So you know that they're done with that bit. Now, with that aside, I'm now going to pass on to our panelists. So Ria, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Ria. My pronouns are she, her, and I am from the Philippines. I realized I was ace around 5 years ago, but I've known about asexuality since I was in high school. Even though I've known myself as being asexual for quite a bit, I didn't really meet a lot of people like me. Especially offline. Most of the people I met were from the internet, and a lot of them were from the West, like America, some in the UK, a bit in Germany, and not a lot of Asians, especially people of my kind. I didn't know anyone who was Filipino and identified as asexual or aromantic until last year. Last year, I found a Facebook group for Filipino aces, and although it's still fairly new and very small, I do hope to meet more people like me, and I'm glad to see that there's representation of other Asians, especially in the East Side.
Thank you, Ria. Jules?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jules. I'm from Vietnam, and I'm coming from the ASEC in Vietnam, an organization who works solely for asexual rights in Vietnam. We are participating in also organizing LGBTQ movement and activities in Vietnam. And from the moment I participating and become one member of Asexual in Vietnam, not only did I have the opportunity to meet more asexual people, to meet the more LGBT member in my country, but also I get to face and get an inside perspective of not only the stereotype surrounding asexual, but also about gender equality and heteronormativity. And I've got wonderful and amazing opportunity to talk to all these panelists here about the Southeast Asian heritage problems we are facing. And I would like to, for you guys to know about us, to know about asexual in Southeast Asian, and may help us, supporting us to grow bigger, and one day will see us as a union, as a community that have a strong voice in an asexual community around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jules. Gem HP?
Hello, everyone. My name is Gem, and my full name is Haflung, but you can call me Gem HP. And I realized myself was asexual when, like, about quite long, like 10 years ago. But I'm not really come out with anyone, and until I met I met asexual in Vietnam, and everyone in there is really support and real lovely. And yeah, I think this. I hope that we can discuss a lot of meaningful things. And yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Kerry, if I come over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kerry. I'm 31 years old and I've known about asexuality since I was 14 and I've identified as such since 16. My family is originally from Hong Kong and I grew up there. I've since moved to Australia, so I've never had much of an opportunity to get to know the asexual community in Hong Kong, but also at that age, it really wasn't an option. And even now, when I try to look into the existence of asexual communities in Hong Kong, I'm not convinced that there's very much of a community out there that I can find online. So yes, awareness is very much an issue in the Hong Kong society.
Great, thank you. And if I go over to Huyen.
Hi everyone, my name is Huyen. I'm 18 and my pronouns are she, they. I first known of asexuality and became an ace activist in 2019, and I hope that all of my knowledge and my experience can really help you to know more about ace experience and the discrimination that we faces in East Asia and Southeast Asia.
Great, thanks so much, everyone. You've got some lovely comments in on the YouTube chat at the moment. So if you'd like to go and read them, please do. But just to kick us off with our discussion, I have this first prompt. What are the issues that you feel that ACEs of East Asian or Southeast Asian heritage face? And if I pass it on to Ria first to start off this discussion.
Yes, hi. I guess the biggest, well, not necessarily the biggest, but one of the most prominent problems that East Asian and Southeast Asian people face is that it's not really known here. There's barely any languages for it in many of the countries. There's hardly any representation, and because I and a lot of people that I've met found it through English communities, it's hard for people who, unlike me, who has English as their second language. They can't really understand what it means to be asexual because there's no written work in their native language. And how can we spread more awareness and more advocacies if we don't even know what it means to be asexual, especially when it's mostly discussed and presented through the Western languages.
Great, thank you, Ria. Jules?
Thank you, Sarah. And Ria, I think that is very reasonable comment of yours. And with me, the problem, particularly with our country, and I think for the most in Asia and Southeast Asia, is the section. We have UNESCO. I have heard that maybe Western country, an European country, or are helping us building our sex education program. But while they are executing it, the first thing is not equally distributed throughout all of the younger generation. For example, again, my country in the mountain area, they have access to information and they have no soci knowledge. Therefore, they are burdened more with maybe self-doubt, asexual, being an LGBT person, and also in the big city, in the urban, even though we have sex education, asexual is not usually included in the sex education. Therefore, that is also adding to comment of your areas that we have much lesser representation in our culture and in our daily life. Yeah.
Thank you. It's really interesting to see some similarities between the two countries. Just for those who may not be familiar with the acronym SOGI, could you just explain what SOGI means? And that's for Jules, sorry.
Remember the full word of it? Yeah, I don't remember the full word of it, but but it's basically knowledge about sexual identities, sexual orientation, and kind of the term that related to the LGBTQ community, to kind of is an umbrella word for all the labels that it's kind of like a subject for you to learn about the labels in the LGBT communities, and kind of thing like that. So if anyone wants to interested in it, maybe you can search the SOGIE, and a lot of things will come up to you right away.
Great, thank you. I think someone's in the comment said sexual orientation, gender identity expressions, but pretty much what you said. So yeah, thank you. I just thought it would be worth highlighting, as some people may not be familiar with that. Gem HP, what are your sort of experiences like in comparison? Are they quite similar to Jules or quite different? Gem, I wasn't quite sure if you were able to hear me.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, because I couldn't hear that clearly?
Oh no, that's absolutely fine. I was just wondering if your experiences were quite similar to Jules.
Can you repeat?
Yeah. Were your experiences quite similar to Jules, or are they different?
Yeah. Well, my experience with my experience quite hard, because like in school, my teachers is the one who introduced me about LGBT and asexual. And then when I realized I was asexual, she said that that really knowing in Vietnam, and I should, like, oh my god, yeah, asexual is really knowing in Vietnam, and I think that's like in our 10 years, I thought that I was the only one, like I was the only one is queer, and everyone just like talking about growing up and having something, and I was thinking about is, wow, that's not the thing I want, and I feel like kind of weird, until I found out about asexual. I really appreciate it because it's give me a lot of information, and because of that, it's make me believe in myself more, and I think that I want to have everyone that when they realize they are asexual, they have enough information and they can, like, confident with who they are. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think quite a few people would relate to the feeling of, am I the only one? Actually, yeah. Carrie, can I pass on this question to you, just to remind you, because I realized I asked it quite a while ago, what are the issues that ACEs of East Asian or Southeast Asian heritage face?
So to echo what the other panelists have already said, the lack of information is definitely a major issue. So in Hong Kong, I think in schools there is reasonably comprehensive sex ed for, but that's limited to heterosexuality only. While we're not to the extreme of pushing abstinence only sex ed, I don't think there is very much information about anything outside of heteronormative identities and sexuality. Yes, heteronormativity is definitely very much an issue there as it is possibly in other parts of the world. On one hand, due to the traditional kind of taboo about sex, just it is something that just isn't very widely discussed. But at the same time, we also have the phenomena of sexualization in media, and in short, I guess some of the similar issues to as they exist in say the Western world, if you will, but I think on some level possibly worse because of I think on average we do have more of the taboo around sexuality is stronger. And to add to that, also lack of information in our language is an issue, which is why I try to volunteer to help translate content about asexuality and aromanticism into Chinese.
Thanks for sharing that, Carrie. It's really interesting to see the similarities, but also in other cultures that also don't have English as a first language, a main language even. Hoyan, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this?
Hi. I also completely agree with everything the other panelists said about the erasures and lack of representation in the AIDS community. And I can also add that there is kind of a disconnection between like the member of the AIDS community, especially in my country, since like sexuality and sex is still very taboo things to talk about. Therefore, people think that anything related to sexuality must be dealt like privately and should not be something to be proud of and should not be something to talk about. Therefore, a lot of asexual people never find about their identity and like often think themselves as being like broken, like a straight broken people like that. Yeah.
Thank you. It's really I've really enjoyed listening to you all and just, as I say, seeing the kind of the similarities with your experiences. So thank you for that. Now, with the following questions, just to remind the panelists, you don't have to answer every single one, or all of you don't have to answer the question. The next one we're going to go on to is this. How have familial expectations impacted your feelings about your ace identity? Does anybody would like to take that question? Ria, go ahead.
This is a very familiar thing to ask because perhaps in Asian countries in general, but especially in the Philippines, we're very community-based. We value, for first and foremost, the people that we're with, and I know that the world in general is family-centric, but the way that my culture especially puts emphasis on the importance of family. You're expected to help family even if you don't like them, even if you have problems with them. You're expected to be linked with that through blood, and like people are always expecting you to get married, to have kids, and there's hardly anyone here that stays single, or even if they date or have relationships. If you don't have kids, then you're not yet really there, you know. And I definitely felt that from my parents. Even when I came out to them as being queer in general, they would say that I just didn't know what I was feeling, that I'm still very young, and eventually you're going to want that support system with you. And by support system, they only expect it to be family. It's fine if you have friends, but they're not going to be there to support you till the end. At least that's what many of the Filipinos here think. You always fall back on family, and if you don't have a family at the end of your life, then there's really no point in their eyes. And it took so long of fighting my parents for them to accept that I really do want to be independent, and maybe I'll have kids. I don't know. I'm still pretty young, but it's not something that I necessarily think is a need. And they've come to expect that whatever is my decision is what I really do think will make me happy. But it took so long.
Thank you, Ria. I really, from someone who's from a Filipino family, I really related a lot to what you were saying. Kerry, can I come over to you? What are your thoughts on this?
In Hong Kong culture, again, yes, family is also a big thing. But I'm already relatively lucky in that while my mother used to ask me quite a lot about whether I have a relationship, over the years, she's already gotten used to the fact that I will always remain single. In particular, I want to point out that so for context, I'm transgender. She used to know me as her daughter, and so back then, she used to. Well, as soon as I finished high school, she started asking quite often whether I had a boyfriend, and I kept saying no. But when it came to coming out to her, I never quite got around to using the word asexual, either in English or in Chinese. But I did eventually tell her that I wasn't interested in men, as a short way of avoiding the question. But she eventually started asking whether I had a boyfriend or girlfriend, which still misses the point, but on a different level is already kind of a step in the right direction, if you will, that she's at least willing to consider the possibility of me not being heterosexual. Later on, she kind of realized it wasn't worth the time to ask this question over and over again. But the last time she brought up the topic, she put more of a focus on the concept of settling down and having a family. And I had to emphasize that I am already very settled down with my life as a single person. I also want to touch on the fact that Hong Kong culture is definitely very success driven, if you will, where even relationships are kind of commodified, if you will, and the lack thereof is kind of seen as a failure. And but on the flip side of that, because I am reasonably successful in my career, and so I already have some kind of success, and I feel that that's one of the reasons that my mom has been more able to accept me for who I am and overlook the lack of a relationship.
Great, thank you, Kerry. I really related to the because of being successful. I also really relate to that. Jules, what are your thoughts for this?
I think in culture, in Southeast Asian culture right now, there are two kinds of parents. The first one that like conservative, and the one that's open. So my parents is in the middle of that. In Ria, maybe Carrie. In Carrie case, she may be more opening. On Ria, more conservative. With the parents, they want to touch that topic at all, sex or any lovers. But yes, of course, I relate so much to Carrie and Ria about when are you going to start a family. But my problem is the most thing that I really uncomfortable with is our parents doesn't share or help us get through the part that we identify ourselves. For example, don't want to talk about sex because my biological sex is a girl. Always be safe. You have to be careful. I want you to have a lover, but in secret. You must not let me know. And you're just gonna brought a boy home, and you are about 27, and then great, I will start a family for you and I will give you the money and you will have a wonderful life. That what their thought was. But they don't really share with us or connect with us in a mentally way. I think that is the trait of every tiger in Asia culture, that they does not want to know about us, does not want to get to know what we are thinking, because they think that we are so different to each other. I think that's why being asexual, a lot of people in my community does not think that coming out is necessity itself, because the parents are so distant from us. But I have heard a lot of cases that even when your partner doesn't accept you because you're an asexual, you have chemistry in sex and sensual attraction, they put up with it, satisfy him, or do anything to keep the family healthy. And I think that is really toxic logical way of thinking, is that parents is a major support for all of us, not just finance, but we need to when we are the younger next generation, we are going to be parents, or not, we'll just be an older generation to another next level generation. We need to be the role, share with them our story, to tell them that it's okay to be who you are. Because our parents have gone to a war, have gone to a lot of stress in the financial and social life. So that just make us feel very pressure to get to the same level as them, and we just want to break out and be single, and does not want a long company with us because of that experience. So just to sum up is, I think the effect is that our parents is distant with us, so we are kind of like a lonely wolf in the woods that we're trying to figure out on our own, and that can cause to a lot of problems, and we can go to in a lot of traps that we might not even realize. Just that.
Thank you so much, Jules. And to finish off this question, Gem HP, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, my family is really like not really a traditional Asian family, but my mom is kind of like really a tough mom, and uh, my dad okay when I come out with him that I asexual, but my mom was not. Her problem is she kind of like ignore my problem. She think that well asexual. I think I asexual because she thought that I asexual because I not met the right guy yet, and kind of like she thinks I'm scared of getting married or something like that. But the problem is not because I want to about getting married or having kids. I'm not scared of that. The problem is I asexual and she could not accept that. She like, well, yeah, that's not really a problem. It's just you not met the right person, and I really feel like, well, like she denying my identity, denying who am I, and it's really tough. From like about when I come out with her, it's really tough time. But then about over the few times when I talk to her more and make she understand that that I'm asexual and why asexual and what is asexual to her. She take note of that, and she understand, but she still cannot accept. Yeah, she still keep the mind on her, keep her mind that yeah, someday you will change, and I really think like this that because like really not like in my country and in kind of like Asian country, parent and kid they not really close that much to sharing about identity, that who am I, what I want to be. It's only about you have to become this, you have to do that, you have to keep the name for the family, something like that. And with me, that's really a pressure because my dad and my mom have been like a really good naming on their work, and they want me to keep moving to like being a big things or something like that, and they think that I will make my family proud. And what happened if someday I telling people that, yeah, hello everyone, that I am the asexual, and they think that is will make my family, like, going down, something like that. It's really stressful. But I still trying because I'm trying not because just for me. It's also for my sibling, for my brother, for everyone. Because I think that when people can understand more, they can communicate and they can, like acknowledging about asexual and helping us get through the tough time like that, not just ignoring and abandon it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you haven't met the right person yet, just from what you're saying towards the beginning. That's a very, very relatable thing. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question. Where is it? And I'm going to get Huyen to start this off. What do you want non-Asian asexual people to know, and how can we help to make the community more accessible for you? Now, I know one of the things that was mentioned already was about having the accessibility to knowledge. So, for example, Kerry mentioned translation. Huyen, do you have any other thoughts for this question?
Yeah, I agree that we need more like translation from English to other language documents about sexuality. I think we also need like more representation of asexuality in the media. Since I noticed that most asexual representation in the media are either or come from white people, and POC uh, are not really represented widely. I want people to like demolish the prejudice of and the sexualization of Asian women. Like seeing like the Western media sexualize Asian women a lot, and therefore people think that it's some kind of paradox for Asian women who are ace exist. And I also want to highlight that asexual Asian asexual aren't all like celibate monk that often represent in the media. Yeah, and I think that the accurate representation in Western media and like the wider media is what we need.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else want to add an answer to his question? Yes, go ahead, Ria.
Yeah, apparently my voice has been really soft, so I apologize for that. I just wanted to add that I wish a lot more people who weren't Asian, whether they were in the West or in any other parts of the world, uh, I I wish they would realize that there is more than one experience to being asexual. Uh, Even though there is some similarities to the reactions or the situations that we find ourselves in with being asexual, our culture does pose different problems and different issues that we have to face with being asexual. There's Since there's a lot less knowledge in our native languages for the LGBTQ plus identities and experiences, um, it's harder for people to know about the lesser known identities, and the invalidation is a little different. They there is this notion that it's fine as long as you keep it behind doors, and because of that, we have a hard time finding ourselves in our community. We're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to see ourselves represented properly, because we have to be private about our personal life, and sexuality especially is not something that people are open to discussing, especially with the older folk. So it's hard to educate other people when you're not even allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually do have a related question, if anybody does have an answer to this. But are there any East or Southeast Asian writers, public figures, or role models, or other people you look up to that have helped you live your life as East or Southeast Asian ace-identified people? If anybody does have any answers for this, if not, I can move on to the next question.
I guess I just want to say that I wish I could answer this, but alas, I really don't know anyone that's like actually known that's Asian, whether it's East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, West Asian. I honestly don't know anyone who identifies within the A spectrum. So it's so hard to find representation of your own experience, because even though we're getting more representation of asexuality, how little that may be, there's basically nothing about our own cultures.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned that Queer China UK is really good in the UK. But if anybody does know of anyone else, so thinking about those kind of in the media representation, please do mention it in the chat. And then also for any speakers, if you do think of anyone, just let me know. I'm going to move on to the next question. So this question is, how do you feel about the media trope of the desexualized Asian man in connection to asexuality? How do you want to see yourself represented in media? So Kerry would be able to answer this question, I think. But for the other speakers, I'm just going to say gender in general, for example, the sexualization and fetishization of Asian women as well, to add to this. Kerry, do you want to kick off this question?
Yes, I think this question follows on quite well to what was said earlier. The whole concept of somebody's sexuality being inherently linked to their gender, one way or the other. That's the entire problem with media tropes, is that yes, people like sorry, start again. Asexual men exist, and but that has nothing to do with cultural background, and yeah, this is the whole underlying problem about media representation, where one way or the other it can become a stereotype, where going on to about the opposite issue of the sexualization of women. Yeah, that's the flip side of the same issue. Although on a different level, ironically, on a personal level, I think perhaps it is precisely because of this desexualization. Maybe that's actually why in my day-to-day life, I think I can avoid people asking me awkward questions about sexuality. Perhaps they do, perhaps on some level, cynically, I think it's like the reason people know not to bring up the question with me is because they see this desexualization. Yes, it's possible for things to be right for the wrong reasons, if you will.
Thank you, Kerry. And did anyone else want to answer this from a different perspective? So, for example, let's say the sexualization and fetishization of Asian women. Otherwise, I can move on to the next question. No? Okay. Right. Now I need to actually find where that was. Where are you? Oh, here it is. sorry, it's on the list. Sex ed in Western countries is lacking in teaching about asexuality. How do you feel when people from these countries come to Vietnam to teach it when their own countries have it wrong? And I'd also like to open this out to any other countries, so to whether it's Hong Kong and the Philippines. Huyen, could you start us off, please?
Hi. That is a really interesting question, and since I also noticed this trend of like Western expat or white expat coming to Asian country seeking for women, because especially Asian women, because we are often sexualized and seen as submissive, and people often come here to teach us about like sex ed through that, and I think that it give a really like inaccurate view about view of sex and other topic about sexuality. Since we're also lacking of sex ed in our school, a lot of girls and people in general seeking sex ed from like the internet, Western internet, and from like Western people, and I think that can be a really harmful source of information if they didn't seek it carefully.
Thank you, Ian. Carrie, what are your thoughts about this?
Due to its colonial history, I suppose in Hong Kong, the education curriculum to some extent already has quite a lot of Western influence. But I would say that sex ed around the world probably lacks content about asexuality, and that's not limited to any particular country. But in terms of the basic heterosexual sex ed that's already existing, in Hong Kong schools, there's actually quite comprehensive heterosexual sex ed from primary school onwards, and it's not necessarily any worse than what it is in Western countries, if you will. At least we don't really have as much of issues with abstinence-only sex ed, which is not very helpful at all. We do get to learn about the importance of safe sex and how to prevent sexually transmitted diseases, use of contraception, etc. So I actually did part of my schooling in an international school, and while I've moved away before I got to year 12, over there in, I think, year 12, they even do talk a bit about same-sex relationships, where I wasn't there for it, so I don't know how much detail they went into, but yes, we even have some level of acknowledgement of same-sex relationships. So as much as Hong Kong society as a whole is pretty conservative, in terms of sex ed, I think, yeah, we already do pretty well at it. And so, yeah, it would not be the same kind of context where we really wouldn't be needing people from Western countries to try and, I don't know, come into talk down to us on it, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just saw this really interesting comment from Kate Wood. I hope you don't mind sharing this, Kate. It's so bad everyone ACE issues. Less than 1% of ACE people learned about asexuality in schools. That's a worldwide survey, although in English so skewed. So yeah, it's not great anywhere, is it? I'm going to move on to the next question. Thank you so much, Sipa. People who say you should just cut your family off if they aren't accepting don't seem to really experience family in the same way as me. Have you ever been told that? And I'm going to pass this question on to Jules first.
Sure, absolutely. I have heard this so many times in my life. I think maybe they just, especially in this generation, I say the term in English, we have Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. So, for example, I'm Gen Z. The problem with that vision is when the Gen Y, which is directly above, they have under the pressure of having to commit to their family. because their parents is directly coming out from the war. They born 80s, 90s, and they know they have responsibility to take care of their parents, because in such Vietnam has a very difficult period in the 80s, and all parents struggle to find food, to find jobs, to provide to our kids, have adequate education. So it's became like a burden for Gen Y to come back to their family. But because of that, they tell us, the Gen Z one, that you should just go. You should leave. And because I have been here and they are not listening to me, they are not accepting my sexuality. So the best chance for you is to go. And I think the people who's coming on that situation, they've been through so much that they have to say this question. But on the other hand, there are some people just doesn't really care. They view themselves as a separate member of the society, and they does not recognize the distribution, the love, and the support from their parents. And we have to view this as, because the older generation, they have so much problem on their own. So and because teaching is kind of, you pass down a survival kits to children. They the kid what they know. They want it to be hetero, so they can get a more fluent, a more smooth way in life, and that's how they view it. So to change their shape, their perspective from that point is so difficult. I just think that these peoples have for our parents to not to understand our sexuality, but to accepting it is a tough task, because they learn in the hard way. They have to fight for it. They have to be feel for it. So everything they have is coming from their experience. So to tell them accepting something is not familiar with them is kind of a penalty to them at all. And I think, but it's changing now, and especially the people, we view this question and we have to ask ourselves that we have to come out. We represent, not just to show ourselves that we exist, but to help our parents to know the world better, to know this world today. And maybe I have heard some story that our parents are asexuals, but they have struggled with their life so much that they have that guilt for their life. And maybe if we come out with some of them to realize that, oh, they're asexual and they're proud to be that, and they're not having any mental or physical disability, they're just them. And also that when accepted as asexual, we can send them back. We can in a conversation, we can be an equally side that have pros and cons. We can have comments, we can have statements that both respect each other. And because they are I think that is a very interesting thing in Vietnam, because if I have something in my, everyone in our neighbor know that. So maybe parents can exchange to every other parents, and that will have other kids, other children. So cut your family off is not exactly the case, because if you get through that barrier, you get to know your parents better, to get to know their perspective, but you get to help other people, and maybe spread out love and the diversity, not only for asexual but also other LGBT community and disabled people, that they view as the majority, that we have the same equality with others. And I think, yeah, maybe that. And because we are born, the parents give us the life. We are not a burden to them. We are a gift that they have inherited from the sky. I would say every children is such a treasure to their parents. And now if you are really a child and you are looking at your parents and see all the struggle, you would not leave them. Not to think of them as something you have to look after in your older life. You have to pay money to have to diaper for them, but as some in the mental way, we have the connection, we have the support that no other people can give you in your life. Everyone can and you, but and I think that is that the parents is such a potential army that we have, but we just haven't known how to use that yet. Why cut them off, you know?
I really like the way you phrase that, the idea of parents, being an army. Yeah, I really like that. And I can really relate to what you were saying. I think people who live in a diaspora have a similar sort of experience, especially when you kind of you move somewhere and you're starting sort of your parents work hard so you can have a better life and a good life, and so I can really, just from what you were saying, I can really relate. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So I just want to thank the panelists, Ria, Jules, Jen HP, Kerry and Huyen, for sharing your great perspectives, taking the time to answer the questions. Thank you for everyone for coming along and watching this panel, and thank you for all your lovely comments. Please do share the love for our panelists so they can read them through afterwards as well. And just so you know, there's 87 people watching us right now, so it's really cool to have so many people. Now there is a 10-minute break now, but coming up is exploring asexual representation in the media, also ACEs and ACEs of South Asia, if you want to go check those out. And make sure to look at the program on the website. If you would like to keep talking about this, we do have some questions we haven't had a chance to answer. If you go on Discord and make sure that you have the ACEs of East Asian Heritage role selected, you should see a discussion channel come up. If you're not sure, just go to the help desk and they might be able to help you out. But please do keep talking to us. Just thank you so much for coming along, and I really hope you have a great time at the rest of the conference. Goodbye for now.